Always focus on fundamentals. Don't be swayed by fad. Don't be swayed, especially by what we call feature creep, because when you want to do a turnaround, you just have to be very disciplined about it. So truly focus on getting a company to profitability and not overscaling. So fundamentals and profitability, people need to focus on and be disciplined at.
Welcome to Brave. Learn from Southeast Asia's best tech leaders. Build the future, learn from our past, and stay human in between. No BS on success. I'm Jeremy Au, venture capitalist, serial founder, Harvard MBA, science fiction nerd, and dad of 2 daughters. Every week, we debate startup news, interview changemakers, answer listener questions, and share personal insights. Join our movement of over 40,000 members and get transcripts, resources, and community at www.bravesea.com. Stay well and stay brave. Hey, really good to hang out with you. Excited to share your story.
Hi, Jeremy. Good morning.
Yeah. Well, it was nice hanging out through our mutual connection, which is Jeff Lonsdale coming in from Vietnam and America at his social party with Sao Lonsdale. And it was good to see you again at a recent Raffles Junior College Alumni Business Network. Okay, someone's screaming at me for the wrong title of it right now. But
Raffles Business Network, RBN.
Raffles Business Network, RBN. There we go. So we got to see Kheng Lian, the Razer founder, as well as a few other folks from Love Benito and Ninja Van, like Lai Changwen, also speaking. So yeah, it was interesting to see that. And I was like, hey, we should jump on a podcast because you're doing some cool stuff with tech. But yeah, could you share a little bit about yourself?
Hi, good morning. My name is Kheng Lian, and I'm one of the general partners at Turn Capital. And why Jeremy is saying we have very unique strategies because we actually buy controlling stakes in stressed, underperforming, growing consumer technology companies. And we turn them profitable. And we're able to do that because of the combined 40 years of experience my partners and I have, because we built successful companies like 17 Live Group. My co-GPs are Joseph Phua, the founder of Paptor and 17 Live and CEO there, and Shang, who has been his CFO for the entire duration as well. When we came out and we were looking at the market after our listing last year, I did think about, hey, let's go raise a VC fund. But because of the expertise we have, it's better to just go pick up infrastructure and actually build on top of it, because not every team has the expertise that the three of us combine and produce.
Fantastic. So let's go back to the beginning. Maybe back since we went to the same school, Raffles Junior College, but you were such an athlete. You were in badminton, you were long jump, you were triple jump. So what was going on?
I was actually a badminton captain.
What?
So yeah, I think this is like the dirty little secret, the Asian thing, especially when I'm in the US and people ask, oh, what sport did you do? I was like, do you know badminton, the one with feathers, that shuttlecock?
Yeah.
So anyway, I was part of the national youth badminton team representing Singapore in Malaysia and Indonesia since I was the age of 11 years old, all the way through.
What? 11 years old? You were crushing it from back then? Wow.
This is my party trick. Whenever you have these dinners and they ask for like that little secret people don't know about, damn, I just told people, can't use this trick anymore.
So you're very strong athletes and you choose to do law. Could you share more about that?
Yeah. I was always good at English language, and I like general paper, GP, in school. So it's a little bit more of an argumentative essay. I'm not an argumentative person. I always like to see things from both sides. So going into law was a very natural progression, also because we have been trained to move and prioritize excellence. So at a point, especially if you look at how Singapore has trained us to want to become a professional, either a doctor, a lawyer, accountant. I wasn't good at those, so I was definitely going to become a lawyer and worked very hard to get there, and practiced actually for 6 years, 5 in Singapore, 1 in Hong Kong.
Yeah. And you did an early career in law after that, and you started drifting towards technology. So what was going through your perspective? Were you like, I hate my life, or law is not general paper? So what's going on here?
Let me put it this way. I enjoy the intellectual challenge of law. I did not enjoy the bureaucracy of it. So I used to be a restructuring, insolvency, and cross-border litigation lawyer. When we went to court, it was the small mundane things like, hey, having to ask for an extension in court. I had to spend 3 days drafting this document to go argue for that 3-day extension. I was like, this is not the best use of time and resources. And the reason why I always went back into the ring was because I just wanted to keep winning. Is that necessarily what drives my career and gives me fulfillment, right? So I needed to step back. And I studied law because I wanted to. I enjoyed it, but I always thought, let me try it out and we'll see where I go with it. At the 3-year mark, I evaluated. At the 5-year mark, I evaluated. And it really became a matter of intrinsically, I never really felt like a lawyer. I wasn't that person sitting on the toilet reading your law books, which people were doing. I was able to identify my superpower very early. And a superpower identified through different means, different ways, which is realizing what is that one supernatural thing that I do that other people just don't. And that really was bringing people together, connecting, and really truly bring people to collaborate. So I was always that nucleus in my social groups. I actually organized the Raffles Junior College after prom party. I did a lot
Wow.
I did a lot of JC parties as well.
You're the cool group. That's what it is.
So then with that type of knowing myself and what I enjoyed, I really liked human connection and people. Law didn't fully give me that. So when I knew that, hey, if I could take my natural ability and apply it to something else, I could excel a lot further than I could than in my legal career. But what was it? I wasn't sure. So after 6 years of practice, I was in Hong Kong. I left industry and I wasn't exactly sure what to do next. I explored, and friends in New York invited me to co-invest into a startup. And I was like, okay, I stepped back. Whoa. Okay, the good thing is it will open up a completely new industry that I didn't know about. It will open up a completely new network that I didn't have access to. And thirdly, I strongly believe this in my life, which is you have to take the opportunities that come and just try. So that's the reason why I was like, okay, I'm going to co-invest. And I came in as a super angel. I went into the company itself in New York, learned the ropes, helped them from fundraising to business development, tried to expand it out in Asia. And that's where I really learned, what startup life was. Coming from law, where things are very fixed and, this is what I'm supposed to do. My first few meetings with the CEO then was like, okay, so what am I supposed to do? Then I realized it was the wild, wild west. Startups are the wild, wild west. No one knows what is the right way. And so it was a discussion, and that's where I learned and I loved it.
Wow. And when you're going through this transition, were there any skills you had to learn versus skills you had to unlearn?
That you will always have to be comfortable with uncertainty. Think about it. I was a product of the conveyor belt system. My career path was paved for me and I just needed to walk down it. So one very big thing I needed to unlearn is certainty and learn uncertainty.
So you obviously confronted a lot of uncertainty because you built many different kind of like initiatives and companies in terms of both the venture capital as well as kind of like the startup side. So could you kind of share a little bit more about kind of like that set of experiences that you had in technology before Turn Capital?
So with that first foray into tech in New York, I was later invited to join a venture capital fund in Hong Kong called Vectr Ventures as a venture partner. At Vectr, that's where I also learned capital side of things, investment side of things, where I was deal sourcing, doing due diligence with the team. And ultimately, because I'm a venture partner, I really got a lot of leg room to go around the world and take up what I can. So next interesting turning point was when my current co-GP, Joseph Phua, he was fundraising for his then company, Pak Tor. So when he first started Pak Tor, he hit a little bit of a snag and he came to me. I was still a lawyer at that time. He asked, hey, can you help me fundraise? As a lawyer, what do I know about fundraising? And I was like, okay, sure, I can try. So one interesting fact is that the first outside check he got was from a group of lawyers from Hong Kong. And then when he was closing, so that was his seed for the outside check. And then when he was closing his Series A round where Vertex led, he gave me a call again. He was like, hey, can you help me close the round? I was like, oh, okay. I remember how I did it. At this point, I left law. I had joined Vectr. Okay, let me try. I very quickly closed him $3 million within 2 weeks. He only had to speak to 4 investors and 2 invested. And so it became I actually can fundraise. And the ball started rolling. It was wonderful because after that, Vectr Ventures, who was his anchor investor, actually asked me, hey, would you like to help introduce investors to us? This was because they were raising Southeast Asia fund, which now, but it was the first time they were taking outside capital because previously it was all with Temasek. And I sat down with Keylock, from Vertex, your managing partner there, and I relished the opportunity. And so I went into it and I started to introduce my network to Vertex as well. Thankfully, there were successful LPs that committed, and that validated for myself that this can actually be a thing. So after that, I would say that I was very much more of a ninja in the space. If you knew me, you knew people that I worked with, the deals kept coming. And I only worked with deals that people and brands that people already knew about. That's why I worked with Coffee Eats Bagel. I met Dawoon and Arun, and I was like, sure, you're a good brand. You're well known, you have great revenue and great user base. Let me help you as well. And that also led to me helping the Chainsmokers, the Grammy nominated electronic music DJs who were raising their VC fund at the time. So I ended up having the opportunity to fundraise with startups, venture capital funds. With my experience in the US, I had access to SpaceX in 2015 and at 2018, and this was direct onto the cap table. So I actually have a vehicle with a partner, which is direct on the cap table. So these were the opportunities that I was exposed to, and I was also able to bring back to Asia. So this is the first part of building collective advisory partners, where I was able to invest. I did some angel investing. I put SPVs together. I was fundraising for sales and venture capital funds. And then I started acquiring companies. And then when you talk about the initiators, I started Open Circles. Open Circles is a think tank. It's a retreat and conference that we have led in Bali as well as Mongolia. And we have collaborated with the Singapore National Youth Council to create Singapore's first youth entrepreneurship conference. So this comes from the heart, building community, bringing people together, which is the superpower that I identified earlier. And it all came together because I'm now able to build this ecosystem where I can leverage off investors, entrepreneurs, nonprofits, and creators that I bring together at Open Circles, fundraising skills, the restructuring law skills from early on to all culminate to Turn Capital right now.
So tell me more about Turn Capital, because you're about acquiring undervalued consumer brands and making them profitable and so forth. But why is it attractive? Is it even attractive? How do you think about it?
So we want control over companies instead of just investing and hoping for the best or trying to help. You don't see this very often where operating team comes out and wants to keep building. So that's where we thrive. And that's why the strategy completely makes sense to us. And it's also the perfect combination and confluence of these factors. I've been friends with Joseph for about 25 years now. We met each other when he was in Raja, I was in Raffles. And we kept in contact. That's why when he did his pub tour, I helped him fundraise. I did his fundraise for pre-seed all the way pre-IPO at 17, So we already knew how we worked together very well. Now that we're acquiring stressed companies, my restructuring skill set actually comes in useful. His operational skill set comes in useful. Shang's financial skill set comes in super useful. That brings us together and we're actually able to identify and then help these companies that we acquire first get back to break even, positive unit economics, and then we're able to scale profitably. So that's how we think about what we're able to produce in the world right now.
Could you share a little bit more about how you get about to turn them around? I mean, obviously, restructuring the cost structure is about restarting growth, is about streamlining geographies. How do you think about that process for you to actually actualize that value?
So that process is actually one step back at the deal sourcing part and our evaluation. We're very strict, we're very specific. We are concentrated portfolio strategy. I'm only doing 3 to 5 companies in my fund. And my fund is only a 5-year fund life. I am acquiring companies in the series B, C, D stage. Therefore, we can have such a slightly more compressed timeline. So when we are evaluating companies, the important things we look for, number one, are you in the consumer tech space that we ourselves can parachute in if needed so that we're able to cut off another risk, okay? So anything in social, in entertainment, in media, in e-commerce, these are things that we're very good at and we can come in. 2, do you have more than $5 million in revenue, $5 to $10 million in revenue? Because I'm here to look for a company that has product market fit, revenue. What didn't work well is possibly overspending, management, just inexperience that, again, we can come in. Whether you're in Asia, so that we can bring in our experience here as well. And then 2 other things, evaluating a company's bottom line. When I say this, when I evaluate a company, can I bring you back to break even within the first 6 to 9 months acquiring you. In order to do that, can I trim the fat? Can I reduce your HR redundancies? Are we able to move headquarters around? Are we able to change up operating systems to make them more efficient? Because you have to break even within 6 to 9 months. So we are already planning these. And one of our conversations, part of the due diligence sometimes with the founders, is to go through the entire team and go, "What's kind of needs to be cut," and we talk through that. And the last point that we look at is, hey, where's the exit? So I think you're an early stage investor always and have to think about that yet, because we all understand our pivots. In our business, when I acquire a company, I already need to know where my exit comes from. I either need to know the strategic buyer or market that I can potentially list this on. So if I have evaluated these 5 criteria, then what you mentioned earlier about, hey, how do you actually do the turnaround, is very risk managed and we're able to do it.
That's great. From your perspective, why is it that people can't do it themselves, right? I mean, if you're talking about obviously a large company that has been around for 20, 30 years, maybe it's slow, maybe it's kind of like caught flat-footed by technology trends. For myself, I've worked alongside Bain Capital. I've done M&A, realization of that value. So I think it makes sense for large companies. But for startups and these technology companies, they're supposed to be leaner, more lightweight, on top of technology. So why is it they can't actualize that value or do those things? Because shouldn't they be able to sit down and say, okay, let's cut the team in half, or these are the leadership that needs to go? So why is it that an external party has to do it versus themselves being able to do it?
Because you brought up external party versus internal, then I would say one is sometimes emotion. People do get a little bit too attached to the product, the team, versus the external party who comes in. I can be very objective about it. We can be very objective with this needs to go, that needs to go, this needs to be done. And we're able to take a slightly more heavy hand at it. Secondly, it is sometimes, I'd say, inexperience, because you do need to weigh between scalability versus profitability. It's not an easy balance to make. And we have made many mistakes while trying to build 17 up. So I think it's these different factors that come into play and allows us to help a company more than they can potentially do on their own.
So your first deal was the buyout of the Thai unit of Flash Coffee, which was a venture-backed coffee chain. They closed down their Singapore side, and then they also are still operating as well. So could you share a little bit more about what was your rationale and thinking behind this transaction?
When we first came into contact with Flash, it was actually in March, April 2023, when its Taiwan unit was getting shut down, and we evaluated the opportunity and we decided not to take it because cost structuring issues that we knew we couldn't fix ourselves. So when we heard about the Singapore unit being in trouble, we re-engaged with founders. During that period, we looked across the board to see which other properties we're able to acquire, or the entire company for that matter. And we had to be, again, very strict on ourselves to know, hey, in 6 to 9 months, what are we going to be able to do? Which ones are we able to bring back to profitability? Based on our own analysis, because of high rent in Hong Kong, Seoul, where their assets set, we weren't going to be able to do it. Thailand, we had an opportunity to do that. So 10 months on, we have actually managed to bring our stores to break even already, which is very much according to plan. If you want to ask what we did at that period, we did acquire 46 stores, but we have descaled down to half of it. And now where we're at break even, we're scaling up again and reopening new stores.
Fantastic. So from your perspective, a lot of people have looked at the coffee space and said like, hey, this is not a venture backable business. And some of the struggles that people have had, kind of like that multiple doesn't exist. They need to build it in a way that's much more sustainable with a much more realistic or grounded valuation multiple. So there's one piece. Obviously, the different geographies as a different dimension, right? The Thailand versus Taiwan versus Indonesia story is different as well. So how do you look at this vertical from your perspective?
We look at it because what we promise our LPs is 3 to 5x within our 5-year fund life. So I'm not here trying to build this up to a 10x or unicorn status. We don't have that pressure. And therefore, coffee space, this business model actually works very well for us.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So I think really saying that implies that the industry, it's easier to build that business from a 3 to 5x kind of like growth story over 5 years, which is about what, 30%, 40% every year growth. So I'm just kind of curious, what are you looking for now? What are you hunting for now? Like, any more deals in the hopper?
Yes. So we very much willing and able. So we've raised about 2/3 of our fund already. So we're very ready to deploy, and we are looking for the next company. So again, anything in social and entertainment and media. We have looked at at fast fashion. We have recently looked at another consumer technology brand in the dental space even. So we are open to continue exploring. We look at edutech. We continue to look into dating. There's also a lot of spaces that we know. So we do welcome founders who are friends, VCs who have portfolio companies, private credit funds who have portfolio companies that all need a little bit of assistance, that Turn Capital can come in to be collaborative. We're not competitive, we're very collaborative.
So, do you feel like you're seeing more VCs entering your space or category? Because one joke that we've been hearing around the VC poker groups is like a lot of the VCs have felt burned doing those big swings or home runs. And the joke is that a lot of Southeast Asian VCs are now becoming small cap private equity funds because of the way they're looking at kind of like very tech enabled consumer brands because they feel like it's profitable, it's cash flow, and so on and so forth. And it's not going to necessarily be a high multiple, but it could be something that continues to be a small win. So do you see more competition or do you see that as more collaboration? How do you see that happening?
I actually don't see the competition coming up. People talk about it. One, you need to want to be a heavy lifter. So this requires a lot of heavy lifting. And two, if you're a VC who has had operational experience building your own companies and you actually want to do the heavy lifting, then people will come into the space. Otherwise, that's been taught, but you do need that perfect confluence of an operator, an operating team that wants to keep operating. There's only so much sadomaso S&M around that people want to handle.
Who wants to do the hard work? I want all the milk without any of the work.
No, like being VC is very hard work as well. I respect, and I do come from cut from that cloth. So it is very hard work. It's just a different skill set that's necessary to do turnarounds.
Yeah. Any tip or advice for people doing turnarounds, either as external party or from an internal perspective? I mean, it is a turnaround situation. What are the skills or attributes or decisions that you got to make that you would recommend folks to be thinking about?
I think one, always focus on fundamentals. Don't be swayed by fad. Don't be swayed, especially by what we call feature creep, because when you want to do a turnaround, you just have to be very disciplined about it. So truly focus on getting a company to profitability and not overscaling. So what I'm saying is fundamentals and profitability, people need to focus on and be disciplined at.
Yeah. And when you think about all of this, could you share about a time that you personally have been brave?
Actually ties very nicely back into my career path. So I think when I left law and I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, I stepped into the venture world very bravely into New York of places, and then San Francisco, and then LA. And the good thing there is the network that I wanted to open up for myself did materialize. Did I know that was what I was doing at that time? No. Did I know also that I would end up on a boat with 3,000 people that included Kendrick Lamar, Eric Schmidt, Quentin Tarantino, Aaron Brockovich? No. But that was actually how Open Circles was also formed. So it's called Summit Series, Summit at Sea. This is 2016. I was in this discovery phase, and when I went, I was like, whoa, we need this in Asia. We don't have this in Asia, this type of community where people come together with no agenda to learn and collaborate. And that's why Open Circles was formed, because I'm trying to open your circles of friendship and open your circles of knowledge. So I think what I'm saying here in terms of being brave was really always taking that opportunity that came and making something out of it. Whether it was going to New York and discovering venture. I did 3 months in South America once. I traveled through Peru, Bolivia, Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, and Brazil. And then I ended up in Miami for Summit at Sea, which then created Open Circles. So this entire experience was my very brave episode that culminated into where I am. It was tough. It was rough. It was a very dark alley, not knowing where I was going and not knowing what direction. One big thing that I care about a lot now is being able to empower the next generation. Because when I left law, and this was 11 years ago, I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have people that I could approach or talk to. Also because there are very few lawyers that transition into anything outside of either a general counsel, a restaurant, or ice cream shop owner. My ex-boss used to joke that when he first met me, you're going to go set up an ice cream shop. So this is my ice cream shop. Every day is my ice cream shop, and every day is a is a brave step towards continuing rebuilding this ice cream shop.
Well, I don't know if it's an ice cream shop. Maybe you'll acquire one, I guess. But I think what's interesting is that you went through this kind of dark period. And this dark period you went through was a tough time. What parts made it dark? Was it identity change? Was it a job change? Was it a profession change? What was the aspects that made it difficult?
I think identity and financial. Remember, I had a path paved in gold. Just stick my head down, work very hard, make partner, X amount of money will come in. I chose a path and I blew that out of the water. I didn't know where my next paycheck was going to come from. And I will share with you, for 10 years, didn't have a monthly paycheck. That is not regular. That is very, if I didn't manage it well, can drive a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress. So that part, to be very honest, was not easy. And then secondly, and I love how you brought up identity, and this is something that I've recently been saying. So when I first left law, surely there was, oh, who am I now? And I told myself not to let that bother me. In the 10 years when I was building my advisory and also building myself, and when people are not able to pigeonhole you into exactly what you were doing, because I was fundraising for different companies. I was putting different SPVs together, was running retreat conference and community. So it's like, how cool are you? Wearing credible? And then a year ago, when we institutionalized and formalized Turn Capital, and we have raised close to $20 million so far, people now are able to identify and go, oh, she's a general partner at Turn Capital. And then, so it's not so much about my identity for myself. I know who I am. It's more about the world identifying and then going, oh, now we know how to bring her to the table. I'm not saying people did not bring me to the table before, but now it's easier for people to identify and know which table to bring me to, how to engage me onto the tables, such as this podcast, for example. So I'm just saying that when you're also able to formulate, first, be very strong about knowing who you are. I always knew who I am. And then knowing the identity you're building in the world so that other people can also relate to your identity to collaborate with you better.
Does it feel better now that you're a GP of Turn Capital? Is this the right identity? Or do you feel like you need to break out of it eventually? Like, because you still that vibrant spirit with open circles and bringing and curating experiences?
No, I love being a general partner at Turn Capital because on a day-to-day basis, my life is so varied. Sure, to be
Yeah.
honest, it got a little bit dry when I was running all the fundraising. So
Mm.
between the three of us, roles are pretty well split up. Like I do all the restructuring, the legal, your fund formation, the investor relations, the fundraising. But we all source for deals. We all decide together and we all do the business development part together. So yes, I was getting a little bit tired from the fundraising part. But then when we're sourcing for new deals now, because we have money to deploy, it was so interesting. Last week, I was having calls with orthodontists and dentists trying to understand the dental space for that company that we were working on. Secondly, now I'm working on business development for Flash Coffee in Thailand. Next week, we're flying in. We're going to be doing taste testing for new products that we want to produce. So it's vibrant, it's exciting. My days are different. And I continue to be able to do my community building alongside being a GP. I am very excited to actually share with you that on Monday, I was able to bring together a fireside chat of Nico Rosberg, the Formula One champion, 2016 Formula One champion, who has his own VC fund now called Vectr Ventures, is a fund of funds, as well as Keisuke Honda, your David Beckham of Japan, very well-renowned soccer player who also has his own VC fund. So I knew the two of them from the venture space. I was like, hey, wouldn't it be such a great idea if I could bring both of them together and moderate a fireside chat with them? And we are doing that at Founders Forum on Monday. And the title of the panel will be Fostering the Next Generation of Champions. So the role that I have now allows me to do all of this and it true joy, like it's a joy and a privilege. I'm so happy.
Fantastic. I think what's interesting as you kind of like share about this is that you've also been building like a new fund. Is it scary to build a new fund? Obviously, because previously you were advising and fundraising, and then now it's your name, it's your face on the deck. How's that like?
Oh, absolutely. I saw the difference as in the past when I was fundraising for other people, the no's are to them, right? Now it's a actual no to me. But then that's where I had to learn, hey, it's really not a no to me. It is about the product and whether it fits person's mandate. So emotionally, I'm again not attached to the result after all this time. But there are challenges of being a first-time fund manager. And there's a lot of stress stress, emotional management for myself. So this is just a very personal thing where, hey, I have a target. I'm not at target yet. And of course, I want to get the target faster, but I'm not there. So fundraising is not difficult. Fundraising is just coming up with a deck and getting people to talk to. What's difficult about fundraising is managing your own stress and emotions. So I think that's one of the biggest parts about being a first-time fund manager, but just really understanding product and my market. I'm very glad that we are so differentiated. So I'm not out there looking left, looking right. I'm really running in my own lane, and I'm so focused on my own lane.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Is there any advice for people who are building out their own funds for the first time?
Yes. First, honestly, come up with a very distinct strategy, because every investor that has the ability to invest into a fund is being inundated with opportunities. So how are you actually standing out from the crowd? So your either strategy or your team has to be very unique. Two, when you're doing the fundraising, first and foremost, truly go to your friends and family and the warm circles and the people that you have built up over the years. So I always tell people it's the people that you've made money for who are going to come into your first fund. So I think we've been very blessed to have the LPs that we have, such as Kilok, he's a personal investor. Heng Ong from Long is a personal investor and a mentor of mine. I've worked with them on their funds before. Kevin Lin, the co-founder of Twitch. Keisuke Honda, he's also an LP. And then a number of family offices that we've all worked with that we have helped them benefit financially. So that second piece of advice really is know who you are knocking on doors with. I would say sometimes that third-party intro is not where you should be focusing your time on.
And how do you go about managing your own psychology that you mentioned is so key for part of the fundraising process?
I meditate, I pray, keep myself fit. I do hot yoga every morning, 8 a.m. And I think the most important thing for me is having that support network that if anything goes wrong, I know who I can call. If I fall left, I fall right. I will always have people that will be propping me up straight. But these are also the people who will celebrate my smallest wins with a glass of champagne. And these are really the most important thing.
On that note, thank you so much for sharing about your personal journey. I'd like to summarize the 3 big takeaways to go from this conversation. First of all, thanks so much for sharing about your early experience, about growing up and playing a lot of badminton and crushing it as an athlete, all the way to obviously your time as a lawyer and saying that lawyer lifestyle, the bureaucracy of that is not for me, and using that time to transition into technology as a career. Secondly, thanks so much for sharing about your own experience handling and building out a distinctive strategy at Turn Capital. So focusing on really acquiring undervalued consumer brands and turning them back towards growth and profitability within 5 years. So it's interesting to hear about your fund return target, which allows you to be more considered, but much more realistic about what the growth levels are, but also the cost levels are. So it's fantastic to hear about how that distinctive strategy has turned out for your first deal, which is the kind of the acquisition of the Thailand arm of the Flash Coffee business. And lastly, thanks so much for sharing about your own experiences and advice to other emerging fund managers about what it's like to set up a fund, and advice that you think about how people should be thinking about their fundraise, also how people should be managing their own psychology and thinking. On that note, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Jeremy. I hope to be sharing that glass of champagne with you soon. Good luck on your journey as well. If anything we can help and collaborate on, always reach out, please.
Thank you for listening to Brave. If you enjoyed this episode, please share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. We would also appreciate you leaving a rating or review. Head over to www.bravesea.com for member content, resources, and community. Stay well and stay brave.